The Spin-off Podcast Network.
Are you making the most of your KiwiSaver investment? Generate is an award-winning KiwiSaver provider with a track record of strong long-term performance. Making a smart decision now could add tens of thousands of dollars by the time you reach retirement. Book a no-obligation chat with a Generate KiwiSaver advisor today at generatekiwisaver.co.nz/get-advice. A copy of the product disclosure statement is available at generatekiwisaver.co.nz. The issuer of the scheme is Generate Investment Management Limited, and of course, past performance does not guarantee future returns.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Your dad and Wayne.
Breaking up.
Friendship ended.
Your dad and your dad.
Yeah.
Your dad, so it was beautiful and now it's falling apart.
Friendship ended. Pre-1980s class war is my new best friend.
Tēnā koutou katoa, this is Gone by Lunchtime. My name is Toby Manhire. Annabelle Mather is here. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Ben Thomas, how are you?
I'm good.
Samuel, hi.
Haven't been
Heimlicked. Taking care of us today.
Hi, how you guys going?
Annabelle was very complimentary about your facial furniture, which is much like Wesley from Princess Bride.
For all of those listening to all the Spin-off Podcast Network podcasts, you're going to hear a lot of my moustache content across the network.
Is it a new motif? Has it come up on the Real Pod?
Yeah, it has.
How long did they talk about it on the Real Pod?
A good 30 seconds, and I'll take what I can get.
Okay. The Real Pod is a podcast about reality TV, popular culture, and it's available along with other podcasts, including The Fold, Breakfast is Boring, and When the Facts Change. How about that?
Business is boring.
Breakfast is boring.
Did I say breakfast is boring?
He said breakfast is boring.
Sorry, business is boring. That wasn't.
Don't listen to When the Facts Change.
Breakfast is boring is like
you
the
can get
intermittent
everything
fasting
from
spin-off
there,
podcast. It's like a lifestyle.
Today, very special guest, our Queen, who was in the honours list on King's birthday. We announced Camilla as the Queen.
And as one of the 20 greatest living New Zealanders.
She's
Order of New Zealand.
Right. And deservedly for Services New Zealand. Anyway,
Along with Jonathan Hunt.
anyway, she's here with us on the pod today. Hang on, here she is.
Since lockdown, I'm afraid I have to admit I have become a little bit of an addict.
It's the morning of June 7. There's been an awful lot has happened over the last fortnight since we last gathered here around the Gone by Lunchtime campfire. A very quick, in case you missed it. The Labour Party met up for its election year congress in Wellington to rally the troops and talk about sausage rolls. And through the day and through the night, Carmel Sepuloni called the Prime Minister, this is true, this is a quote, the ginger from the hut. There were two policies. The first policy was not to do a thing that it already wasn't doing, which was increase the super age. That was trying to cast a light on the National Party's policy. The second policy was to extend doing a thing it was already doing in the form of the apprenticeship boost policy. Meanwhile, the country's most ruthless gotcha journalists, the membership of the Birkenhead Bowling Club, extracted the scoop from Christopher Luxon that National was withdrawing from an historic cross-party accord on housing density, leaving Chris Bishop to open up the file marked housingpolicynotes.doc and hastily turn that into a policy for Q&A the following week. Christopher Luxon was also snookered into saying that National intends to reintroduce the $5 prescription fee on contraceptives for most people, which Labour seized on and turned up to 11 by comparing with the Handmaid's Tale, the corollary of which is that since 2017 we have been living in Gilead.
It would turn us into a monstrous patriarchal dictatorship that oppressed women, just like the first 5.5 years of the Ardern-Hipkins government.
We had Simeon Brown getting hot and bothered over some te reo on street signs. Might come back to that as to much of this in a moment, which was clearly about to send The nation of New Zealand, which is named after a province in southwest Holland, disappearing into a big woke pothole. David Seymour drove a Suzuki Swift onto the stage at the Sky City Theatre in Auckland on Sunday to a rapturous welcome from about 600 people who paid $50.
670 people.
Was it?
Who paid $50 a head. Act back with a vengeance, and more user pays than ever.
And the policy was, in order to cut down on bureaucracy, they would add a whole lot more bureaucracy in the form of Minister of Ministry. And I think it's probably a sign of where ACT are, that if they'd announced that policy 2 elections ago, everybody would have been laughing at it, and they're not really now. I mean, it's still kind of funny.
It sounds kind of funny. I actually had a spiel on this for later because, ACT, I think, appreciate the irony of it. This is like one of those things where you see somebody online making a joke, but you don't realize that they're not serious. So, I think the intention of the policy in terms of, creating red tape to create red tape is a conscious decision to try and externalize the costs of regulation making and lawmaking onto government rather than, the populace and the people that it affects. It's basically sort of spreading the pain around, making it harder making the cost of creating new laws and new impositions higher for government, which, philosophically is very in tune with where ACT are at. But it sort of puts the onus back on the officials to justify why something is necessary, through rigorous cost-benefit analysis. And
do you buy that, Annabelle?
It just feels a little gimmicky, doesn't it? And poorly named.
It's not so much gimmicky as it's really an iteration of something that they tried in 2008. So in 2008, they tried to do both of these sort of limbs of both having higher quality regulation and having a sort of objective measures to kind of, cut down on impediments within the economy. So the first thing was, Rodney Hyde was the Minister for Regulatory Review.
The yellow-jacketed red tape cutter.
Yeah, but without a ministry, right, and without his own officials. And so he was successful in introducing these regulatory impact assessments. But they've sort of become a bit of an optional, sometimes
rather than a new ministry, I think we should create an entirely new House of Parliament that is devoted to cutting red tape.
I like it. Yeah, I like it. That's smart.
Sounds more like the Electoral Commission report.
Thank you. We will get to that too. We'll get to the electoral review panel's recommendations. There was also this week a crackdown on vaping, but then over the last 24 hours, carefully laid plans have had to be torn up because we need to go off the top, Annabelle, with the Michael Wood situation. It was yesterday morning. Paul Goldsmith put out the release, and the Herald had the story, and you sort of felt as though Paul Goldsmith, I should say, I sort of seemed like he kind of wanted to exact a hit, but that would be fine. He didn't seem to really seriously expect that we would end up with a situation where Michael Wood was stood down from his transport portfolio. And this was, just to give you a quick TLDR on it, Michael Wood had held shares in Auckland Airport.
And still does.
Auckland Airport shares being the unlikely headline dominating much of our politics at the moment. And also had bought them when he was a teenager, which is... I mean, good luck going back into the CTU without getting a few glares on you when you're buying shares as a speculator as a teenager.
No, disagree. So Contact Energy, which is the other company that he held shares in, and Auckland International Airport were both privatised by the national government in the late 90s when Michael Wood, teen activist with the Labour Party and paperboy and strong saver, would have bought his shares. He would have bought them in the initial float, and he would have been keeping them under his mattress, ready to hand back to the government when they renationalised the company.
So it was nationalisation by a teenager.
I knew Michael at university shortly after his sort of share trading career began. Yeah. He hasn't changed a single bit. I have absolutely no doubt that he bought those in the national interest in order to preserve them and keep them away from foreign investors.
So you don't think that it was so that he could boost his own speculative portfolio and then become the transport minister and deny the North Shore Airport expansion?
Dan Brunskill from Business Desk said that in the time between when Wood first said he would divest his shares upon becoming a minister and now, he would have made a cool $2,400 in capital gains. And once you add in dividends, you're getting near $3,000.
Annabelle, it became more serious over the course of yesterday as it transpired that Michael Wood had been urged by the Cabinet Office 6 times to sell these shares. Michael, if you sold those shares, you're just not just getting on it, just talking to the broker right now. Some emails had arrived in like an old Hotmail address or something.
I feel like Michael Wood's been hanging out with my kids.
Yeah.
Like, have you brushed your teeth yet? Can you go brush your teeth? Wow, waku niho. I mean, it's such a stupid thing to get in trouble over. But this is the problem that Labour has, is just undisciplined, sloppy MPs. It's not going to be their policies that lose them this election. It's going to be the sum total of all of these MPs doing dumb shit that just starts to aggravate people and strengthens Luxon's claim that, you know, he's running this tight CEO executive style team. So it's not a huge conspiracy. I don't think that he was like trying to hold off selling his shares until Wayne Brown had dumped Auckland's ones and then flood the market or anything like that.
Force down the price, I guess. So therefore the council will no longer sell it. Yeah, you're right. It's the coalition of chaos is the line there, but it's really the kind of cabinet of sloppiness at the moment. And you've got when you add in Allen, Wood and Nash, which sounds like a 1970s supergroup, then you've got this collection of examples, Ben, of
Tanetti as well.
Tanetti is before the Privileges Committee, I think maybe today. Mecca Faitari. I mean, it all binds together into something really quite problematic.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. It seemed like nothing at the beginning. You know, these pecuniary interests register stories, they're always a bit of a flash in the pan. It's a kind of con for young journalists to get a bit of a headline. You say, they failed to declare this on the pecuniary interests register. The journo will tend to not be aware that there's usually anywhere between half a dozen and a dozen corrections and updates every year to the register as people sort of become aware of a term deposit that's matured or, you know, and you know, the pecuniary interest register, it is very important. It's very important that people declare correctly and promptly, but it doesn't rise to the level.
Just briefly on that, Lee, carry on. But there is when as a young journalist myself, sometimes when you look through the pecuniary interest thing, and there are a lot of yada yada trust, and you have to kind of take that on faith, don't you? That those trusts are either blind trusts or that the shares involved in them we be declared, because it's not that hard to set up a trust as a vehicle to do all your stock market speculation.
There are now very detailed instructions for filling out the Register of Pecuniary and Other Interests, which was renamed after a dispute between my former boss, Chris Finlayson, and the then registrar. I think it was Dame Margaret Baisley at the time.
What was the nature of the debate?
Well, so he was the victim of another one of these sort of PR gotchas. It was discovered.
You mean he was someone did some journalism on him?
No. So Trevor Mallard discovered that, or found that Finlayson was on the legal title for a property, and he was on there as the trustee of one of his former clients, and he hadn't been removed as the trustee. So as the trustee, he has no beneficial interest in the home. He can't profit from it, so there's no pecuniary interest there, which was the crux of the argument and why it was renamed Pecuniary and Other Interests, because now even if you're the trustee, if you legally own something, even though you have no beneficial ownership of it, you have to list it, and this is why it's now very exhaustive. And subsequent to that, we would always put aside a whole day basically to fill out the register. And, but some people I think do it in a pretty cursory fashion. Usually it's not too much of a problem. It is a privileges issue, but it would not normally rise to the level of the privileges committee. The issue is if he wasn't declaring it at a cabinet level and it becomes a cabinet manual breach. And that appears to be what's happened. He declared it when he became a minister.
Well, it becomes a question of not so much...
But the plan for managing it...
Yeah, the divesting.
You can... any conflict can be managed. Well, most conflicts can be managed. And in this case, the course that they agreed on was he divests the shares. And then it seems a bit uncertain as to whether there were 6 different periods where it was believed he had divested the shares until the Cabinet Office was disabused of that, or whether they were always sort of waiting for him to do it, which I think would mean he was less than sort of the wrong.
Question, just in regards to the sloppiness, and we see a bit of sloppiness with National as well, with their MPs going off and shooting off their mouths about different stuff that's not necessarily policy. But in Labour, is this a reflection of the whips, or is it about the change of leadership, or is it just that kind of end of the second term over a sense of, I don't know, over entitlement
it does feel a bit like what used
something.
to be called third-termitis, isn't it? And there is... you can see that Hipkins is pretty seriously pissed off as well, because the other part to this is that he, and as he reminded us at his post-cabinet press conference yesterday, gave everybody the hard word. When all the Nash stuff was going down, he's sort of, by his account, said to everybody, for God's sake, we cannot afford this sort of crap. If you have anything that vaguely resembles a skeleton in a closet or an I that hasn't been dotted or a T that hasn't been crossed, for fuck's sake. I don't know if this is a verbatim quote, but I'm pretty sure he said, for fuck's sake, do it now.
Maybe he didn't say for fuck's sake, and maybe that's what's gone wrong.
He's weak.
Maybe if he dropped a good F-bomb in there, that would have just given them the they needed.
It's what Camilla would have done.
I think Key was reputed to have given the same sort of speech that, we can't be arrogant, we can't be overconfident, sort of heading into the 2014 election. But, it's almost the same as telling a depressed person to kind of cheer up, that the issue, these problems come because ministers and MPs after a certain period tend to lack insight into themselves and to what they're they've been arrogant about.
True.
I actually have a lot of sympathy for the minister, currently the Transport Minister in exile.
Bro, it was 6 times.
I
would feel sorry for him after the first time or the second time. After the 6th time, I'm like, nah, Bill.
He bought these shares in the late 90s,
sort
right?
It out.
You're grounded.
You're grounded.
There was no Sharesies then. There wasn't even ASB share trader accounts online. You would get a letter from something called Link Market Services, and then you'd have another letter with your FIN number, which you needed to trade.
Ben Thomas is currently playing us a violin.
The tiniest violin.
The administrative difficulty in buying shares in the 1990s.
Have you noticed how nice he is to people he went to uni with?
Michael Wood has got to find a physical letter from 20 years ago. 30 years ago? Whatever. I'm not saying it's right. He should have been stood down, but I get it. I get how you just kind of keep putting it off. You sort of look through some boxes and you're like,
Yeah.
But look, really untied. It smacks of a third term. It's now been 3 ministers who have been stood down from portfolios or entirely, or who have left within, 6 months. Tenetti's before the Privileges Committee. That's the first minister who's been summoned to the Privileges Committee for 15 years since Winston Peters and his donation scheme.
It's also a sense that, Michael Wood
but also great get for Paul Goldsmith. And it really shows, because he initially thought that he just had a minor run-of-the-mill headline, then it's forgotten pecuniary interests thing. But it's, you raise it and you keep tugging on the threads and you don't know what will fall out. You don't know what will fall out of the Wood family attic. Boxes and boxes full of old share certificates.
I'm Toby Manhire, and this is Juggernaut, the story of the Fourth Labour government.
a podcast in 6 parts.
Doesn't give my opponents much time to run up to an election, does it?
This nation is at risk.
What do you think you're up to now, you perverted little liar?
I could smell the uranium on it as you lean towards it.
There's a radical overhaul in the history of New Zealand's administration.
Juggernaut, the story of the fourth Labour government, made with the support of New Zealand On Air. Listen now on The Spin-Off or wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you find it hard staying optimistic with all the financial news in the media? I'm Bernard Hickey, and on my podcast, When the Facts Change, I'm here to help you navigate the ever-changing landscape of economics in Aotearoa. So join the conversation every Friday on When the Facts Change, brought to you by the Spin-Off Podcast Network in partnership with KiwiBet.
Now, Annabelle, among other things and bits of maybe sloppiness, we had this sort of row over te reo on road signs.
Yeah.
Which the National Party seemed to adopt a range of different positions.
It's like a yoga studio up in there with all the different positions up there.
That's right. Yeah. And which adds to the danger when you're trying to navigate through the potholes with all these weird words on these signs. Who knows what they mean? What did you make of all that? And it was interesting to see what's his face, Potaka, come in towards the end and seem to set people straight.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so disappointing to see that with all of the important issues that we face, and I know that, we can talk about a range of issues all at once, but how is it that this has become the big political issue of the day? I mean, I'm really pleased to see the way the media challenged Simeon on his comments, but from a strategic point, what I don't understand is we have an entire generation of New Zealanders now who have grown up singing the anthem bilingually, where te reo isn't this scary taniwha hiding around a corner. This type of political issue appeals to quite a small segment of our community. And Andrea Vance did a really interesting piece a couple of weeks ago where she talked about how National is spending far too much time looking at what ACT is doing, and in the meantime ceding the centre ground, which is really where they need to be harvesting votes. So from that perspective, I don't understand why National would get into this argument when really they want to be getting younger votes, appealing to women, all of that sort of stuff, instead of sort of trying to tug back these people who were probably New Zealand First voters who have now gone over to ACT. But, Tom Kitchen did a really wonderful podcast this morning on the detail about bilingualism, and we have this, for a generation, this belief that any type of bilingualism or multilingualism, whatever the word is somehow a threat to our being. But anywhere in the rest of the world, I mean, you go to LA, all of the signs are in Spanish and English, Ireland, Spain, everywhere in the rest of the world. Wales. There's a wonderful Welsh journalist who's on that podcast, by the way. But yeah, it's like 2023 whānau. We've got bigger issues to deal with.
I became an ardent supporter of bilingual signage everywhere when I was in Beijing trying to find a public toilet. I was like, we need more accessibility for a range of languages.
Is there a risk, Ben, that the National Party is, as Annabelle suggests, sort of putting its neck out, paying too much attention to ACT, but also if you spend all your time at matinee meetings at bowling clubs, that you start to kind of lose your focus on perhaps the part of the vote that you need to, win.
Yeah, I think there's two things to that. The first is that I don't think National are, there are obviously areas where National is feeling a bit spooked by ACT and is trying to kind of narrow that policy difference. You could see they've been very non-committal on He Waka Eka Noa and have said that they're going to make an announcement about...
Sounds like that's going to be housing density part 2.
Yeah, that's right. And of course the housing density issue itself. On the other hand, I don't see that in the Crown Māori relations kind of te tiriti space. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about these issues. They don't want to talk about bilingual signs. Simeon Brown might, but the vast bulk of their MPs just want to stay away from it.
They don't want to demand the debate, as they once did.
Yeah, for exactly the reasons that Annabelle outlined, which is that they want the centre. Probably a majority of their MPs are liberal young progressives themselves. But more importantly, they want those centre votes. But they do recognise that there is a part of their vote who are, who do get stressed out by hearing, Tadeo on the news, and they can't be indifferent towards that. You can't be dismissive of your voters' concerns, even if they are a little irrational. You still have to kind of take people with you and sort of explain things.
Yeah. It's a hard line to walk, though, isn't it?
It's a very hard line to walk, particularly if you've got, say, Simon Wilson at every meeting, sort of saying, this ravenous meeting full of people who only asked about race and only talked about the treaty, which turned out to be demonstrably wrong.
Well, I don't think it was only, but Stuart Salmon-Lund from the spin-off was there too, and he was messaging me during it. He was saying there are an awful lot of questions about race relations.
But the thing is, I think there is I think you have to acknowledge that there is a special sensitivity to that, particularly among younger journalists, that doesn't, where it does assume an outsized significance, in the sense that you will hear, 3 or 4 mentions of that, say, in 13 questions, and that will come to dominate your thinking about what the tenor of that meeting was about.
Joe Moore made a good point about those meetings, which is that you are going to get questions like that come up at them because they're held at like 1:30 on a weekday when the rest of the population is, at work. So it's like grumpy boomers again.
But remember, all those people vote, which is why Labour has committed to keeping the super age at 65, and why, why they double the winter energy payment.
And it's a bit of, strategically, it may well be that the timeline is, let's shore up the base, let's get Christopher being, having the base supporting him, and then as with 100 days to go, we move towards trying to reach out to that middle. I think that they're trying for the middle right now. I don't think they appreciate being diverted into these areas. I certainly don't think it's
just in terms of the bilingualism thing. Like, the irony is that it was actually National and the Māori Party that started calling all of the government agencies by giving them Māori names, which is hugely problematic, because I think that if you're not a kaupapa Māori organisation that's like founded on principles, Māori principles, why would you have a Māori name? And the thing too is, because they're all performing poorly, everyone gets annoyed with them, and because they've got Māori names, people like
Waka now. Exactly. I used to like Waka; they were lovely. Now,
seriously though,
no, and also, I think I don't think it's not national in the Māori Party, but it is. I think it is lazy chief executives putting into effect, the easiest parts, the lowest hanging fruit of their requirements to sort of be treaty compliant and to include Māori in decision making and policy. It's hard to do that kind of thing and to co-design policy. It's very easy to go, we're going to do a rebranding because government departments know how to do that.
Yeah, I feel like it kicked off with Oranga Tamariki when it was supposed to be the Ministry for Vulnerable Children, and Marama Fox spat the dummy, and then it got named Oranga Tamariki.
And then everybody else has been kind of jumps on it because it's just easier than doing real things to help Māori, right? And I can see why people are confused about it. There isn't a standard nomenclature, so Ministry of whatever, Department of whatever. But then when you bring in the Te Reo names, most of them are sort of metaphorical things about being guardians or whatever. So it's not actually even much of a guide to Te Reo speakers.
Yeah, everything back in the day it was Manatu blah blah, Manatu blah blah, and you knew exactly what it was.
Well, anyway, the real danger to National in this is if this debate keeps on going, at some point somebody's going to ask how far into Māori Made Easy Chris Luxon has gotten. And that's not a question any of us who are on our Te Reo journey and have been for the last 4 years want to answer.
The other corner that Luxon has got himself into or found himself in the last few days is on this whole contraception thing, which has clearly been seized upon by Labour. We touched on it at the top, insofar as there is a vulnerability identified there, and for all the kind of hyperbole and histrionics of putting up memes of the Handmaid's Tale, Annabelle, there is a sense that if Labour is, and Megan Woods, remember, who posted that meme as the campaign chair, so it's not just some rando backbencher, right? The idea is, and if you look at the numbers, Roy Morgan provides a breakdown of numbers, and the women aged 18 to 49 is where National is struggling a bit again. It's where National was absolutely in the pits under Judith Collins, and I remember a number of National MPs saying to me privately that this was the big problem. That's what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to paint Luxon as a throwback, fundy, old dude, right, Annabelle?
Yeah, look, as someone who had 5 unplanned children, I don't know if I can really add a lot to this discussion. Clearly they're trying to exploit what they see as National's weak point. Is it a bit underhanded and shit squirrely? Kind of is, and I think it probably causes unnecessary angst for a whole lot of people.
If someone was saying to me yesterday, if the social investment approach was applied to this, you could argue that actually, in terms of unwanted pregnancies, you should be actively paying $5 for every contraceptive. And there's also the issue of GP fees, which is where Luxon would have been better to pivot to straight away. But anyway, Ben, take it away.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Labour have been doing their best since Luxon became leader to try and paint him as essentially a kind of MAGA American culture wars Ron DeSantis type who wants to, impinge on women's bodily freedom. And it's totally evidence-free, right? It's based on, some personal beliefs that he was sort of imprudent enough to kind of talk about in a very clumsy way on radio in terms of his beliefs as a Christian.
He's like me,
abortion.
still trying to figure out his inside voice and his outside voice. It's some fucking relatable shit, bro.
and Christopher Luxon, if Christopher Luxon desperately wanted to and wanted nothing else and tried his best and devoted his entire life to changing New Zealand's abortion laws to make them more regressive, he could not. Right? That's the nature of our parliament. That's the nature of our society. He couldn't do it. And he doesn't want to. If you sit down and talk to the guy, he's at pains to sort of distance himself from any idea that, his religious beliefs do anything more than sort of inform him or suffuse him with kind of the values of fairness and kindness and that sort of thing. There is not any, if you look at the National front bench,
Which is why when he says shit like bottom feeders, it's like...
It's very weird.
It's weird.
Yeah. But, if you look at Nicola Willis, Chris Bishop, Erica Stanford, then you hit Simeon, but you miss him and go on. These are all urban liberals who...
It's true that Simon O'Connor is not necessarily, the Svengali of Luxon politics. But there is also, and this argument has been made, that, well, if you said you were committed to the housing density, we could have the same on the Aotearoa. There are all, people are going to keep saying, I mean, at some point probably he'll have to say, yes, I will resign if I touch the abortion laws or something, just to get out of the way. Yeah. But you're right, he's not going to do it. But there's no question that that's a vulnerability.
No, it is. It is just we take so much of our media, I think, from the States, particularly people who spend any amount of time online. The culture wars are more real to a lot of New Zealanders than New Zealand politics are. And so I think there is, particularly when you're talking about the margins and the sort of game of inches that's happening now between National and Labour. It is a vulnerability for them. It's something that Luxon will have to work hard to address.
We have to wrap, but Camilla has to go. But let's go quickly through the electoral review recommendations. We'll rattle through them. I'm interested to know your thoughts very succinctly on whether it's a good idea, whether it will happen, and then maybe a thought or two. I'll go to you. We'll go first. Voting age 16, Annabelle.
Yes.
Do you think it'll happen?
Probably not, but if you can own a firearm at 16 and get married, then...
Ben,
and if boomers are allowed to vote, then youngies should be allowed to vote.
You're a huge fan of youngsters voting.
I don't care for it either way.
Oh, really? Indifferent. Okay. Do you think it will happen?
No.
Coat rail, the coattail rule ditched, and let's do these as a pair because they kind of come together really. Threshold down to 3.5%, which is a weird number, I think, because they couldn't agree. Do you know in Israel it's 3.25%, which is quite funny. Threshold 3.5%. Coattail rule, the 1-seat rule ditched. Annabelle, good idea, and will it happen?
I don't think it is a good idea to push it down to 3.5 because I think you'll get some of the weirdos coming through. And I feel like if you're able to convince people in an electorate to vote for you, then fair enough to have the coattail. But otherwise, 3.5.
Okay, Ben, what 4.1?
Yeah, I think 3.5, yeah, I think it's too low, and that probably reflects my own biases as someone who's sane. Because I think Annabelle's right. We have hit there does seem to be a threshold that clearly insane parties can manage to get to about 4%.
Yeah.
Clearly corrupt parties can get to about 4%. My sense, representing the non-insane part of the electorate, is that I would prefer a 5% threshold.
Ben Thomas's non-insane party sounds like a real writer. The $30,000 max cap for political donations. No businesses, trusts, unions, any of that. Good idea, Annabelle. Will it fly?
I think it's a good idea, but I think there should be no donations in politics at all. Don't ask me how that works. I don't know how it works. I don't know. Maybe everyone's given a certain amount of money by the Electoral Commission, but I just think we should keep money out of politics.
Ben Thomas's not insane commission.
His non-insane commission will fund everyone according to whatever, and then we all live happily after. It's fine.
My favourite solution to electoral funding is the one that Bryce Edwards always talks about, which is this one where you're not allowed to fundraise as a party, but every voter gets a voucher with like $10 and then they get to donate it to a particular party to use for advertising. And
it's
so
like
then all you'd find is the parties raise all
election.
this money to advertise to the voters to get their advertising dollars. I don't think that this is as much of a problem as people think. If it was possible to buy your way into Parliament with big money, we would have the Internet Mana Party in Parliament, we would have the Colin Craig Party in Parliament, we'd have Top would have been in Parliament for about 9 years. The existence of egocentric millionaire or billionaire parties in New Zealand, is proof to me that you can't buy your way to power.
A referendum on whether the term of Parliament should increase from 3 to 4 years.
Are you asking me, should there be a referendum or should it be 4 years?
Yes.
I'm into 4 years.
4 years? And do you think it will happen? We probably will. No. I mean, because this is the one where the politicians
we have the referendum,
want it, right? Like that's the.
But
we had one in 1992.
I thought I read that it got ruled out.
Yeah, well they did like 70%.
No, like the one that.
Oh, doing it now?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
then,
well, not immediately.
Be nice.
Yeah.
I doubt it.
Yeah, let's have a referendum. I doubt that it will. I doubt that it would succeed. But
we should do 4.25 year terms.
I think it might succeed.
No, it's such a classic New Zealand thing. People say they hate elections, but they want to have them more frequently. They don't want it taken away from them.
I don't know. I get the impression that there's a growing awareness that people realise that it's hard to get shit done in 3 years.
I think the problem with the referendum as well is that people who dislike the incumbents go, I don't want this lot in for 4 years. Yeah. So you have a kind of natural inbuilt resistance and then a bunch of other people, and before you know it, you get over 60. And so it's a bit of a non-starter. What else? Rewrite the Electoral Act to make it clearer and incorporate principles of te tiriti, Annabelle.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Ben.
Do it.
Sort of.
Is that removing the word fax and stuff like that I saw? So you can't fax in your shit anymore.
Which I think is, that's pretty bad. What if my fax is...
what's wrong with the fax machine.
Ben Thomas's non-insane party communicates solely by fax. It's the
That's
only
why they're
technology
getting my
that they
vote.
believe will not be tampered with by the gremlins.
Okay, so some of their, when you read their 355-page report, some of their suggestions about making the Act more treaty compliant were pretty good. They want a general treaty clause, must maintain the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. I disagree with those clauses in general. I think by now we have enough familiarity with the principles of the treaty that you actually should be putting that into your law making. You should have specific requirements, to advance the partnership or to meet the requirements of the treaty, not just these sort of catch-all Hail Mary sort of, we'll just leave them to figure it out clauses. It's kind of technical point, but...
Vibes.
We'll have to finish on a technical point. That's us for Gone by Lunchtime for now. We'll be back soon. I'm going to talk to Deborah Hart, actually. Maybe do a little bit of extra Gone by Lunchtime in there at some point. Thanks, Sam. Thanks to members for keeping the lights on here in the Gone by Lunchtime cave. Ben Thomas, Annabelle Mather, me, Toby Manhire. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, I'm Alex Casey, Senior Writer at The Spin-Off. We wouldn't exist without the ongoing support of our generous members. If you're able to, you can make a donation at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
Kia ora e te iwi, Te Aihe Butler here, Podcast Manager at The Spin-Off. If you enjoy listening to our podcasts, consider supporting our mahi by signing up to become a Spin-Off member at thespinoff.co.nz/donate. The Spin-Off Podcast Network.